this is just like the kind of last slide here that I want to go over of a timeline perspective of if you did want to go with a bank loan, and you probably will in any deal, but similar to how in my work in real estate with, the pre-qual and kind of the pre-approval that you get, and then how it works, like this is generally speaking how a bank will do the underwriting and the timeline required for a bank to close. And so that's why in a normal deal, what'll happen is that even if, okay, there's a deal for sale, you'll talk to the seller, you'll talk to the broker, you'll put in your letter of intent, which is basically like signing you up exclusivity, like basically establishing exclusivity between you and the seller, meaning that the seller is not going to be shopping it around and kind of talking with any other buyers. So that's something that you really want to tie up, because typically you'll need at least 60 days. Generally, we recommend 90 days with like a 30-day automatic extension, because this part, the financing part, is usually something that's a little bit out of our control and something that you want to start as soon as possible, but sometimes difficult to start until you actually have a signed LOI. And so you can see here, generally speaking, that what'll happen with the bank, right, is that once you have an LOI signed with the seller and you engage a certain bank to be able to get an SBA7a loan, this is what the process looks like, right? So you'll have to sign a term sheet and they'll do underwriting. Now, this usually happens in about 3 weeks. So they'll request you for the LOI, they'll request like ideally a data room or at least the financials and the tax returns, right? And they'll start going through and spending a little bit of time on their end, figuring out whether this is just even on a high level, a business that they're willing to kind of finance. So the tax returns need to show that it's been profitable. The purchase price needs to make sure it's not out of whack compared to the income and the cash flow generation potential of the business, right? And so that'll take about a couple weeks, and that you might want to do that with one or two businesses, I mean, banks at the same time, because what'll happen is that they'll send you a term sheet, and then you don't, to lock you in after the term sheet, they'll basically require a deposit. And so you might not want to do multiple deposits, but you will want multiple term sheets, right? This is where you can actually negotiate an interest rate, and you can negotiate what the terms look like and what the fees look like. Because just like with any financing, there's general fees. And with the SBA7a loans, that's very minimal. So it's very difficult that you'll find an instance where, the fees will be egregious between one bank or another. But the interest rates are definitely negotiable, because again, the SBA7a is just a program, but it's not like the SBA itself is issuing you the debt, right? The bank at the end of the day is still the final underwriter and the final decision maker that's issuing the debt. It's just going through what's referred to as the SBA7a loan program, which means it's a protection for the bank that God forbid something happens and you default or you run away, that the government is going to pay back the bank. So that's why the banks are able to push on such better loans and rates and limits to you, where you don't even necessarily need experience in that industry and you can get a loan. And you could be fresh out of college and you can get a loan. Like, because they know that, God forbid, as long as they fit the qualifications and still do their general overriding, profitable business, tax returns, things like that, then they'll be able to make their money back from the government, right? So it's a great incentive program that's been established for a few decades in the US that incentivizes the purchases of businesses through that program.